12 years later, my daughter was packing for Paris when someone knocked on the door. The sound was hesitant, almost trembling. I opened it and saw a man I never thought I'd see again. Mr. Wallace. His face was older, haunted. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said softly, "but I need to say I'm sorry. In person." For a moment I froze. My daughter stood behind me, puzzled, her ticket still in hand. She didn't know who he was. Not yet. He took off his cap, voice breaking. "I've quit drinking, but I haven't had a peaceful night's sleep since that day." His knees gave out. He fell to the floor, crying. "I see it every time I close my eyes. The headlights, the rain, your truck." The air thickened. My daughter whispered, "Dad, who is he?" I looked at her, then at him, the man who had changed everything. I had imagined this moment for years, how I'd shout, how I'd make him feel my pain. But standing there, all I felt was exhaustion and something heavier, pity. "He's the man from that night," I said quietly. Wallace looked up, shaking. "I don't want your forgiveness. I just needed to know you're still alive." I could barely breathe. So many words lived behind my tongue, but only one came out. "You didn't take everything." He blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" I turned to my daughter. She was crying now, silent, her eyes full of understanding. "You didn't take her," I said. "You didn't take the best part of my life." He lowered his head. The silence that followed felt sacred, like the world had stopped to listen. My daughter reached for my hand. I felt her grip, warm, alive, and I knew the truth at last. Sometimes love isn't about keeping what we have. It's about learning to forgive what we've lost. Those were the quiet days, the kind that looked ordinary but lived forever in the heart. Our house was old, the paint was peeling, the floor creaked under every step. But when I heard my daughter laugh, it felt like the richest place in the world. Every Friday evening, I came home from the road. My boots were dusty, my hands sore from the wheel. Yet the moment I saw her on the porch, everything faded. "Daddy!" she'd shout, running toward me, her little arms wrapping around my waist. I'd smile and lift her up. "Guess what Daddy brought this time?" Her eyes would sparkle. "Candy?" "Close," I'd tease, "but this one's even sweeter." Inside, Maria would shake her head, laughing. "You spoil her, Charles." I'd kiss her cheek. "Can't help it. She's my reason to keep the engine running." She'd look at me, tired but tender. "Just promise me you'll rest. Don't chase money so hard you forget why you started." At night, when both of them were asleep, I'd sit by the window, listening to the trucks passing on the highway. The sound used to comfort me. Now, it only reminded me of everything I still hadn't done. I whispered to myself, "One day, I'll give her more. A better house. A childhood without worry." Then a small voice from the dark startled me. "Daddy, are you still awake?" I turned, and there she was, clutching her blanket. "Come here, sweetheart." She crawled onto my lap, yawning. "Don't go too far next time, okay?" I nodded, pressing my hand on her hair. "I'll always come back, I promise." But as she fell asleep in my arms, I knew promises were easy to make, and sometimes too hard to keep. It started like any other day, the kind you don't realize will change everything. That morning, Happiness came home from school with her backpack half open, excitement glowing in her eyes. "Daddy," she said, tugging at my sleeve, "can you buy me a Kinder Egg? You know, the chocolate one with the toy inside. Everyone at school has one." I laughed, wiping grease off my hands. "A chocolate egg, huh? That's easy. I'll get it for you next time I'm on the road." "Promise?" she asked, holding up her pinky. I hooked mine with hers. "Promise. But promises are light when you say them, and heavy when you have to keep them." That weekend, I came home late. The rain had slowed my truck, the delivery ran long, and every store along the highway was closed. When I stepped inside, my little girl was still awake, sitting by the window in her pajamas. The look on her face, that quiet mix of hope and hurt, nearly broke me. I knelt down, smiling through exhaustion. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I couldn't find it this time, but I'll bring 2 next week. Deal?" Her lips trembled. "You forgot, didn't you?" "No, You always say that." Her voice cracked, sharp and shaking. "I don't need you anymore. You never keep your promises." The words hit harder than any storm. She ran to her room, the sound of her door slamming echoing through the house. Maria looked at me from across the room, sadness in her eyes. "She doesn't mean it," she whispered. "She's just a child." I nodded, but my chest felt hollow. "Maybe she's right," I said quietly. "Maybe I promised too much." That night, I sat alone on the porch, listening to the thunder roll in the distance. The road called again, and I told myself I'd make it right. Next time, no matter what it took, I'd keep that promise. The call came just before midnight, an extra delivery, urgent, double pay. I was exhausted, but I said yes. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe I just needed to feel like I was keeping my word this time. The rain was already coming down hard when I hit the road. Headlights blurred through the windshield, the wipers fighting to keep up. I kept thinking about her face at the window, the way she said, "You never keep your promises." Those words rode with me, heavier than the cargo in the back. At a small gas station off Highway 41, I stopped for fuel. The clerk was closing up, half asleep behind the counter. I scanned the shelves, and there they were, 3 Kinder eggs sitting all alone under the flickering light. I bought all of them. My hands shook as I held the bag. "She'll smile again," I whispered. Back on the road, the storm grew worse. The wind howled through the cracks, rain slamming against the glass. I drove slower, squinting through the blur. The highway stretched empty, until it wasn't. Out of nowhere, a pair of headlights swerved into my lane. Too fast, too close. The world snapped into chaos. I slammed the brakes. The tires screamed. The truck skidded sideways. The other vehicle spun, metal screeching against metal. In that fraction of a second, everything slowed. The chocolates rolled off the seat, hitting the floor, cracking open like fragile hearts. Then came the sound, that deep, terrible sound, the kind that never leaves you. Gasoline. Rain and smoke filled the air. I tasted blood and chocolate, bitter and sweet all at once. I remember thinking, don't let it end here, not before I keep my promise. Then, nothing, just light and silence. When I woke up, the room smelled of antiseptic and rain. My body felt heavy, foreign. I tried to move my legs, nothing, just emptiness where they used to be. They said I was lucky to be alive. I didn't feel lucky. I felt hollow. Every sound outside the hospital room, footsteps, laughter, the squeak of wheels, only reminded me of what I'd lost. When they finally sent me home, I couldn't bring myself to step or roll into the living room. I stayed in the back room, door half closed, pretending to sleep whenever happiness passed by. I could hear her small footsteps stop in front of the door, then fade away. One afternoon, a knock came. It was Dr. Evans, holding a paper bag. He smiled gently and called out to my daughter in the hallway. "Hey, sweetheart, your dad asked me to bring you something." Her voice lit up. "Really? From Daddy?" He nodded and handed her the bag. 3 chocolate eggs. He said they're all yours. The sound that followed, that burst of laughter, that little gasp of joy, broke me open. I pressed my palms to my face, fighting the tears. "Mom, Daddy kept his promise," she shouted from the kitchen. Behind the door, I couldn't breathe. My shoulders shook. Maria slipped in quietly, knelt beside my chair, and took my hand. Her voice was soft but firm. "She doesn't have to know everything," she said. "You did it, Charles. You kept your word." I nodded, unable to speak. Her thumb brushed my knuckles, warm against the cold metal of the chair. Through the door, happiness was laughing, the sound bright and alive. For the first time since that night, I felt something stir inside me. Not joy, not peace, but something close to both. And as the rain began again outside, I whispered to myself, at least she still smiles, even if I no longer can run to her. 12 years had passed. The house was quiet, filled with the calm before goodbye. Happiness's suitcases waited by the door, her ticket to Paris in hand. Then came a knock, soft, uncertain. I opened the door. A man stood in the rain, thin, trembling. It took me a moment to recognize him. Mr. Wallace, the driver from that night. "Mr. Perez," he said, voice cracking. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to come, to say I'm sorry." Maria froze. Happiness looked between us, confused. "Dad, who is he?" I couldn't answer. Wallace stepped closer, removing his cap. His face was older, haunted. "I quit drinking," he whispered, "but I haven't had a peaceful night's sleep since that day. I still see the headlights, the rain, the sound of metal. I see your face and that little girl by the window." He dropped to his knees. "I've carried it for 12 years. Every time I close my eyes, I hear you screaming." The air felt heavy, unmoving. My daughter watched me, waiting for anger, but I had none left. I looked at him and said quietly, "I lost my legs that night, but I still have my daughter." "That's enough." He stared up at me, tears falling. "You'd still forgive me?" I shook my head. "I'm not forgiving you. I'm just done being angry." Silence filled the room. Maria covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking. Happiness's eyes glistened. Wallace bowed his head, whispering, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." For the first time in years, I felt the weight lift from my chest, the bitterness, the pain, all of it slowly melting away. I reached out my hand. "Go home, Mr. Wallace," I said softly. "Live better than you did before." He took my hand, trembling. The rain outside softened, almost gentle, as if the world itself had finally forgiven too. After Wallace left, the house fell into a heavy silence. The door clicked shut, but the echo of his words lingered in every corner. Happiness stood still, pale and shaken. It was then that her grandfather spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "He's the man who hit your father that night," he said. "Your dad never told you because he didn't want you to carry that pain." Happiness's eyes widened. "That night?" she whispered. "The accident?" He nodded slowly. "Your father had just bought you those chocolate eggs. He took one last trip, even though he was tired, just so he could keep his promise." Tears welled in her eyes, then fell, one after another. She turned, running down the hall to her father's room. "Dad!" she cried, pushing the door open. Charles looked up from his chair, startled by her voice. "Why didn't you tell me? All these years, I was angry. I thought you didn't care." He sighed, eyes soft with the weight of old pain. "Because, sweetheart, I didn't want you to remember me as someone broken. I wanted you to remember me as someone who kept his word." She knelt beside him, tears streaking her face. "You shouldn't have protected me from that," she said. "You deserve to be seen for what you did, for what you gave up." Charles smiled faintly, shaking his head. "A promise is just a word until you make it mean something. You gave mine meaning." She reached into her pocket, her hand trembling. From it, she pulled a small candy, the one she'd been saving since her last award ceremony. Placing it gently into his palm, she whispered, "Now it's my turn to keep a promise, Dad." For a moment, neither spoke. Their hands stayed clasped, the candy between them like a bridge, fragile but strong enough to carry 12 years of silence. Charles looked at her, eyes glistening. "You already have," he said softly. "You came home." Morning came quietly, soft light spilling through the window. The air was cool, still carrying the smell of rain from the night before. Charles sat by the window, dressed neatly, his wheelchair facing the driveway. Happiness stood there with her suitcase, her eyes bright but wet. Maria hugged her daughter first. "Go live, sweetheart," she whispered, "and don't look back too often." Then Happiness turned to her father. For a moment, neither spoke. She knelt beside him, holding his hand. "I'll call when I land," she said, smiling through tears. Charles brushed her hair gently from her face. "You don't need to," he murmured. "I'll know." At the airport, as the announcement called her flight, he watched her walk away, one careful step after another, until she disappeared beyond the glass doors. For years, he'd watched the road leave him behind. Now, for once, he was the one staying still, and it didn't hurt anymore. As the engines roared to life, the camera lingered on his face, lit by the morning sun. In his palm, the small candy she'd given him lay untouched, wrapped in gold foil, its sweetness unspent. His voice came softly, steady, filled with peace. "I once lost my legs to keep a promise, but because of her, I found my heart again." He looked down at the candy, smiling. the kind of smile that carries both pain and forgiveness. The frame held on his hand, still, gentle, trembling slightly, as the plane lifted into the sky behind him. And for the first time in 12 years, Charles Perez breathed without sorrow.